right. This week, I wanted to talk about how we can set our students up for success by really carefully thinking about the writing prompts that we give our students and how the writing prompts prepare students for our expectations and the writing tasks that we're going to ask of them. All right. Before I do so, I just want to talk a little bit about, I want to share, I really enjoyed your 2-column notes on the writing rope. And I really appreciate this model because one of the things that it does is it allows us to sort of understand why writing is so complicated and the many ways that we might want to consider supporting our writers. And when we are facing a situation where our writers are not meeting our expectations, we might think about what supports to put in place. And so the different parts of the writing rope, the different strands really offer us some insight into the different ways that we might need to support our writers, and the different things that might be happening that are causing them to fail to meet the grade level expectations that we might have of them. But it's not enough to just kind of think about, because the writing rope doesn't really give us all of the strategies that we need to consider. And I would argue that one of the very first and most important things we can do is to help our students to know the focus by writing really good, high quality prompts with our students, okay? And so what we want to think about before we begin anything is to think about what we want our students to do. What are we looking for? If we want our students to synthesize across multiple pieces of evidence, then we're going to have to make sure that our prompt kind of prepares them for that. If we want them to analyze a passage, the language in a passage, we want to make sure that our prompt prepares them for that. So we really want to think about what are the tasks, what are the reading and writing tasks that we're asking our students to do, and be prepared to write prompts that set them up for those tasks. Generally, what a good prompt needs to do, if we want to have our students thinking about writing as communication, I want you to think about what communication looks like for our students, say in the cafeteria. Let's say one of our students goes down to the cafeteria, they have lunch 5th period, but something really super funny happened in Algebra 2. And Miss Smith and Joey had a really funny interaction. If my best friend, who I have lunch with in period 5, wasn't in that classroom in period 3, I wouldn't just go right into the story about what happened. I'd actually begin by inviting them, by kind of framing it for a minute. Oh my goodness, the funniest thing happened today in algebra class. Do you know who Joey is? And then I'd go on and I'd give some background knowledge to make sure that they have the frame, the context with which my story will make sense and be funny. If that student comes in and just says, oh my God, Joey, blah, 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 and there's no like explaining that this happened in algebra class, that it happened this morning, the student, my best friend's going to be like, what are you talking about, right? We need to help our students to see that they have to do that in writing as well. And one of the ways that we do that is by modeling it, by giving them an invitation into the conversation. Then after we've done that, after we've given them a chance to kind of like frame, get into the into the neighborhood of where we're going to be writing about, like the neighborhood of the prompt, right? Then we give them the prompt, and then we give them what we're going to look for, and we give them some information that helps them to think about what knowledge and experiences, as well as what skills they might need to bring to this task. Okay. So always when we write a prompt, we want to think about the essay type. And there are many kinds of essays that we might consider appropriate for secondary students. And some of them are, and not all of them, but some of them are listed here: an argument, a descriptive, an expository, an evaluative, a reflective, an analytical, a narrative, an opinion, a persuasive. I might add a research-based, a synthesis essay, right? All of these things, right, are essay types. Regardless of what essay type, we really want to think about our prompt in almost 3 different pieces. The first piece of the prompt is that introduction or topic. That's the one that helps to give the frame, where we orient our student writers. This is where I love a good quote. I love to use good quotes. There's so many good resources out there to get a good quote. So if I'm going to if I want my students to be exploring the theme of the American dream in The Great Gatsby, I might go out there and find a really good and compelling song lyric or compelling part of a speech that's about the American dream, or even like a joke or a meme that's about the American dream, right? I'm going to invite them into thinking about the American dream generally before I tell them that I'm going to ask them to talk about the American dream and this novel specifically. So then what I want to do is I want to give them information that encourages them to think about when they're brainstorming and making the connections, what are they going to be doing? So basically, what is the task? I'm going to be priming the pump by giving them the task. And then I'm going to give them the details. What is that task going to look like? What is the audience? What is the purpose? What are my look-throughs? Okay. So those are the three components. I thought I would share with you 3 of the AP language prompts, in part because I think A, they're in ELA. B, the good thing about the language prompts is you can see that each of them have different types of writing tasks. The language in comp class is unlike the literature class. It does a lot of nonfiction and informative tasks. So you'll see that, but I think you'll see that many of these could be good models even for a literature-based assignment. All right. First question on the AP test gives them all of this information about timing. And this is actually one of the reasons why I sometimes am challenged is thinking about AP as the only way or the appropriate way even to give credit for college credit for students, because I often wonder, is the most important skills or the most important skills in ELA actually something that can be reduced down to a 3.5-hour test? I have my doubts, but that's okay. But I do think that they write some phenomenal tests, some phenomenal standardized tests, and they're great for me when I'm writing my own assessments. They're really great models. And so I just wanted to share with you 3 different prompts that they have. And they're for 3 different kinds of writing tasks as well. So in this first one, you'll see in the 19th century, most of the 20th century, handwriting instruction, print and cursive, was virtually universal in schools across the United States. This is oh, hi, the funniest thing happened in algebra this morning. This is my framing and contextualizing, helping the student to kind of bring their brain to the general conversation that we're about to have, right? And so I give them some historical perspective. Then I'm going to give them, here becomes the part 2. What are you going to do? What are your skills and connections? Carefully read the following passage, the following 6 sources, including the introductory information for each source. Write an essay that synthesizes the materials from at least 3 of those sources and develops a position on the place, if any, of handwriting instruction in today's school. And then they list the sources, right? Okay, here's the information. This is the task. Now here are my look-throughs. In your responses, you should do the following. Respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible position. Select the use of evidence, right? Explain how the evidence supports your use appropriate grammar and punctuation. So right away, you can see this prompt has 3 parts: an introduction, a description of the task, and some look through, some things to think about as you're writing your task. Okay, so let's look at it in a different kind of prompt for a different kind of task. So this one is a rhetorical analysis. If you do a poem, if you have the students analyze a poem, if you give them a passage and you want them to analyze the language in a passage, this would be an appropriate model prompt for that. And so let's look at what this would look like, right? On February 27, 2013, while in office, former President Barack Obama delivered the following address dedicating the Rosa Parks statue to the National Statuary Hall of the United States Capitol building. Rosa Parks was an African-American civil rights activist who was arrested in 1953 for refusing to give up her seat in the segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama. This is my inviting them into the conversation. This is really critically important. If you think about somebody like maybe my students that don't have the same historical background, maybe my students that come from other countries, right? This gives them some really basic background knowledge that sets them up for success. So if they were to have read this without that knowledge of Rosa Parks or President Barack Obama, you might, set them up for failure. You might still need to help them. They might not understand what the Statutory Hall of Fame is, right? They might not understand the Capitol building. They might still need support, but this gives us at least a basement of support. Every one of our learners has some information that they can bring, some background information to bring to the conversation. Now I'm going to give them a prompt. write an essay that analyzes the rhetorical choices Obama makes to convey this message. Then I'm going to give them the look-throughs. In your response, you should do the following. Respond to the prompt, select and use evidence to support your line of reasoning, explain the evidence, demonstrate an understanding of a rhetorical situation, use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. So you can see this one has been tailored more to a different kind of an essay. This one is a rhetorical analysis, whereas the first one was a synthesis essay, where they were using evidence across multiple sources. And this is your traditional sort of argumentative or opinion, really, writing. And so this one you can see, again, inviting in. Many people spend long hours in trying to achieve perfection in their personal or professional lives. Similarly, people often demand perfection from others, creating expectations that may be challenging to live up to. In contrast, some people think perfection is not attainable or desirable. So you can see here, right, that gives some nice concrete sort of framing of the argument. And then here's the writing prompt. Write an essay that that argues your position on the value of striving for perfection. Then here's the things that I'm going to be looking for. In your response, you should do the following. Okay, so these all set my learners up for expectations, right? Lets them know what I'm going to be looking for. And so we want to think about that, because what I'm going to ask you to do this week in the discussion board is I'm actually going to ask you to write what you think is an effective prompt. I'm going to share with you a handout on writing effective prompts, and I want you to go ahead and I want you to write one using that handout to guide you. If you are in a field experience, or maybe you're taking another education course where you have to do some planning for a different unit, you can certainly use that. If you have nowhere to go and you don't know where to begin, you could always use the LOL paper, and you can return to that close reading scene maybe, and you can write a prompt for students to have them do an analysis of that scene. So that's a place that you can go to. But what we're going to do is we're going to write this. We're going to post it in the discussion board, and next week we're going to spend some time giving each other feedback on the argument or the prompt that we gave. Also, then, just to give you sort of a heads up, we'll look at the importance of rubrics and how to then consider the use of rubrics when we're evaluating these assignments that we have, or these writing assignments, writing tasks that we developed through the prompt. Okay. So if you have any questions, as always, shoot me an email or send me a text. Otherwise, see you next week virtually.